At no point should I ever been pulled over. At no point should I have ever been put in handcuffs. At no point should I ever been stripped of my gear in public while the funeral that I worked for was passing by. So now my business is going to suffer.
Jeremy Dewitte makes a living providing motor escorts for funerals, sometimes a dozen per week. These are the motorcycles he and his workers at Metro State Services use, outfitted with purple and yellow lights. He has cars and trucks outfitted the same way. And everyone wears helmets and uniforms with the Metro State logo. That's how he was outfitted when Windermere police pulled him over during a funeral Saturday. The police report, written by Officer Gerald Ogletree, says he passed over the double solid yellow center lines. But Dewitte says he was actually pulled over by a sergeant, Mark DiStefano.
As soon as I got off my motorcycle, he advised me my motorcycle was stolen. And I said, that's impossible, Sergeant.
He says he tried to show the sergeant his registration, but was instead handcuffed. A freelance stringer who told me he showed up to video record the scene says officers ordered him away as he watched Dewitte being arrested.
He was politely, not politely, but he was getting in the car, willingly, but they were, just pushing him in there.
You can see on his employee's body camera when Dewitte's worker pulled over to see what was going on, the officer ordered him away. That's when Dewitte learned he was being charged with resisting an officer without violence, falsely personating an officer, and unlawful use of a two-way communications device. The report also referenced Dewitte having a Glock-looking gun. This gun, which is a mace pepper spray gun, he says is for protection. Even though Dewitte was dressed identically to his staff, with these helmets, with the star on them, and with the badges, only he was arrested. After showing us video of he and his team joining the funeral processions of OPD Lieutenant Deborah Clayton, Deputy Norm Lewis, and for Kissimmee officers Matthew Baxter and Sergeant Sam Howard, Dewitte wonders how Windermere could brand him as someone posing as a cop.
I'm definitely going to want some kind of suspension and definitely a letter of apology.
Greg Fox, WESH 2 News.
I'm going to put some images on the screen, and I want you to pay attention. Let's just see how sharp all of you are. Okay, now, who's got a really good memory? Raise your hand if you think you can tell me what you just saw. Sophia, we'll start with you. 5 things are up there. How many can you name? Nurse.
I think I saw a firefighter, a police officer, and then I can't remember the rest.
Okay. Nurse, police officer, firefighter, you can't remember. What else? Okay, that's pretty good. All right, who else can remember? Okay, Leah?
There was a nurse, police officer, firefighter, mail carrier. Oh, I can't remember the last one.
Sophia and Leah, you guys did pretty well. You got some things correct, except you all missed police officer. Why? Because that's not a cop. That is actually a funeral escort. Here's a video of a man you saw in the uniform that you thought looked like a police officer.
Hey! Dumb in a blue car.
Are you a cop?
Don't worry about what I am, because I'm a state agent. So what you need to do is make sure you're doing the right thing, boy. Sit tight, sir. Please don't continue. Hey, boy. Hey, piece of boy. Boy.
Okay, now, all right, the man in uniform is Jeremy, and he's outside the studio right now because he says he wants me to see his motorcycle up close to show me how it does not look like a police motorcycle. He says he's been falsely portrayed in the media and victimized in his community and wants to clear his name. He has even asked for a polygraph test. Bottom line, he's facing felony charges and if convicted could spend up to 85 years in prison. So there is a lot at stake here. Here's what Jeremy has to say in his defense. Take a look while you walk outside.
Get the over.
Stop pretending you're a police officer.
Law enforcement is accusing myself and my contractors of impersonating law enforcement. Nothing could be further from the truth. Primarily what Metro State does is provide funeral escort services for families and their vehicles for a funeral.
Repo, take this intersection and keep this under control.
One of the things that most people don't really realize, it is against the law to cut into a funeral procession.
Hey!
It can be extremely frustrating when somebody that's not part of the funeral cuts into the funeral.
Blue car.
Sometimes things get very heated.
Get over!
They start yelling at us,
If you're not law enforcement, I'm not stopping for you.
where we have to mirror the same behavior.
You out of my funeral! Out of my funeral!
Even though we wear the high-vis yellow shirts and we are using the purple flashing lights, some law enforcement still believes that we're impersonating. The uniforms are nowhere near the same or the colors of our lights. I believe that there's certain members of law enforcement that are out to get me. My company has received a total of 86 citations for running red lights or using an air horn. We've gone to court 30 to 40 different times where we won every citation except for one.
Let's get some body footage of the cars racing by.
5 years ago, we started wearing body cameras to protect ourselves from being written inaccurate citations. I personally have been arrested 3 times over the past year.
Just sit tight. Okay.
I was arrested for impersonating a law enforcement officer, reckless driving, and crossing a double yellow line. About a week after that, while on funeral escort, an off-duty officer hit me with his vehicle while he was cutting in and out of the funeral. I slammed my hands on the hood to push myself away so he wouldn't actually run me over. I was arrested for impersonating a law enforcement officer and assault with a deadly weapon. I believe these are wrongful arrests. I'm due in court very soon. If convicted, I could face up to 85 years in prison. I feel that we've done nothing wrong. I don't deserve to go to prison for telling people to get out of funerals.
Get out of the way now!
I don't deserve to go to prison for impersonating a law enforcement officer when we're not impersonating.
Hey! Stop your vehicle!
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on. Jeremy, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. So this is your motorcycle,
Yes, sir.
and you've got 18 of these,
Yes, sir, we do.
and they're all this way, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, and this is, it says Metro State on the front,
Yes, sir.
where that usually says state police or
Police or sheriff.
something like
correct.
that.
Yes.
And I notice you've got a badge image on the front.
The
that
motor
says-
wings. Yeah, that is
It
correct.
says Metro State here,
Yes, sir.
and it says Vehicle Protection Unit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, where'd you get this image?
That image was actually one of the images that most motorcycle companies use from funeral escort companies throughout the U.S., and that was one that we used as well.
Well, most motorcycle cops and like highway patrol and all use that image as well, right?
Only in California and another, I think, Ohio. However, most agencies use the shield that they use. Florida
Okay.
doesn't have that logo at all.
All right. And what is this on the side? Is this a siren, a
That's
horn?
the-
What?
That's the horn. That's the bell for the horn.
Can we hear it?
Sure, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, that's not meant to sound like a police officer.
No, sir.
I noticed that this is black and white, like a, you agree this is like a police officer's motorcycle color scheme.
Well, in Florida, most agencies use white or blue or green motorcycles. Black and white is a very rare, almost not found at all law enforcement style motorcycle. So
Yeah.
we went with the black and motorcycles to make sure that we were very different than local law enforcement in Florida.
So you wanted this to differentiate.
Correct, yes, sir. In fact, we went with this style motorcycle instead of a Harley Davidson because Harleys is what's used by South Florida law enforcement or Florida law enforcement. This bike is more of a East Coast bike, and of course, we're not doing funeral escorts in the East Coast.
I'm wondering about the helmet and all of that. Is that necessary? I guess that's for safety.
Of course, yes, yes. The best thing about these helmets is when it's raining, which it rains all the time in Florida, we're able to pull the visor down to protect us from the rain. We have our communication so we can communicate with each other openly. And then we also have our video cameras to make sure that we're properly protected from any kind of things that are stated incorrectly.
And you think you've been harassed a lot by the
Yes.
police down there.
Yes,
Why
sir.
are they picking on you?
my past.
Yeah. Well, what about your past?
Well, sir, once upon a time when I was a very young man, while in the academy, I impersonated a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, but this was like years and
1998.
years. I mean, you were a kid then, right? What,
That is
18 or something?
Yes, sir. Just turned 18.
So they've carried that grudge all of this time, you think?
Well, one of the strong beliefs, which we've found a lot of proof of, is there's a sergeant that is trying to shut my business down behind closed doors because he wants to start his own funeral escort business in the state of Florida.
Okay, and you've got a very successful business, right? He has a
He
business.
does.
And now this is your attorney, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
This is Amir Ladan, one of the best attorneys in Orlando, Florida.
And Amir, thanks for taking the time to be here.
Happy to be here with you.
And you guys wanted to be here because you want to tell your side of this story.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'd love to stay outside all day because it's beautiful here, not raining like it does, as you're describing in Florida a lot. But believe it or not, there are more things inside of our studio to take a closer look at. You do not want to miss what's coming up. Hey, did you like that video? Well, click subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications. You won't want to miss what I have coming up.
We have a total of 18 motorcycles, 2 of them being trainers, 10 vehicles. We've gone out of our way to make sure we don't resemble law enforcement. High-vis shirts and purple flashing lights aren't used by your local law enforcement. None of those items could be considered to be impersonating law enforcement officers. I'm confused how we can go for years without any issues and see everything that's taking place now. And I scratch my head trying to figure out how we got to this point.
Get out of the way now!
Jeremy, a funeral escort, who says for the past few years he's been victimized by local law enforcement and as a result started wearing body cameras on the job. In 2019, Jeremy says he was pulled over and his footage was confiscated, and he has been living a nightmare ever since. Now, his attorney, Amir, says because of the seized recordings, charges have been filed against Jeremy, and he is now facing 85 years in prison. Now, Jeremy says he's been defamed, bullied, and labeled as a serial impersonator, but the world has it all wrong. You say you did impersonate a police officer back when you were 18. You admit that?
Yes.
And at the time, you were in the Explorer group, which is a track to becoming a police officer.
That is correct. I was doing dual enrollment in high school at that current time. I was in the academy at night, and then I was also an explorer, so I could become a police officer when I graduated high school and finished everything out properly.
Okay, but they took a dim view of that, so that took you off the eligibility list to become a police officer.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, I want to ask about, this is one of the uniforms that you wear, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and this is one of the uniforms that you wear, correct?
That is correct.
And what do the pins on your uniform signify?
Well, we have our motor wings for gentlemen or ladies that pass the motor school that we go through. So that way they can signify that they're part of the motor team.
Right. And Amir, you've represented Jeremy for how long?
At least 5 or 6 years.
Just speaking hypothetically, would you caution someone about choosing a uniform like this to go out on the streets in a black and white or a black and white motorcycle? Just hypothetically, would you think that was thumbing your nose in the face of local law enforcement?
Fair question, Dr. Phil. This particular uniform, which is what they call a Class A uniform, is used typically on special funerals for law enforcement officers, funerals for folks with the fire department. It is not unlawful or improper to dress in that manner, any more so than it is to have a black and white vehicle.
What do you wear on your duty belt?
On the duty belt that we wear, we have our radio. I have a tourniquet. We've come across cars on fire, things like that. CPR mask. I do have a baton. Most of my men and women have a baton, pepper ball, flashlight, as well as close contact mace.
Well, you have handcuffs on here.
No, we don't.
No, I've
Sometimes
seen you arrested with handcuffs where they've taken handcuffs off of your duty belt.
some of my men and women do wear
No,
handcuffs.
you, not your
Yes.
men and women, you.
That's correct.
Who do you have the authority to handcuff?
We don't have the authority to handcuff
Then
anyone.
why would you carry handcuffs?
Well, if you're doing security or private security
You're
or
not authorized to do security. Who do you have the authority to handcuff?
you have no authority to handcuff anyone.
Then why would you carry handcuffs?
Again, when you're doing in-house security, that you have the authority to wear handcuffs, you would wear those. Just like any loss prevention at a Target or a
But you
Marshall's
don't
or a
have,
Ross.
but you're not secure. You're not authorized to do security. You're not licensed to do security. You have no authority to handcuff anyone.
On a funeral escort, that is absolutely correct.
I think more importantly, Dr. Phil, no one's accusing Mr. Dewitte of ever taking handcuffs out or applying handcuffs to anyone. That's never been the case.
Nor am I. I'm trying to get to his state of mind as to whether or not he sees himself as a law enforcement officer. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on. Why are you carrying a non-lethal weapon?
For self-defense purposes. And I can answer that because your next question is going to be, why would you need that? We've done funerals where rival drug dealers have attacked each other while on escort. We've also had escorts where family members show up at funeral services that aren't approved to be there, and they've attacked each other to where we have to call the police and have help respond.
Okay. And you say you take great pains to be sure nobody confuses you with law enforcement.
Right. Again, we were talking about this uniform. This is only used once in a blue moon. The 90% of the time that we do our escorts, we're in our high-vis yellow uniforms.
Okay, and you say you would, Amir, you say this just be worn for a police funeral. Have you done a police funeral?
Yes, sir, we have.
And in your community?
Yes, sir. The sheriff's office and the Orlando Police Department did contact me in reference to a drug dealer, rival drug dealer funeral, where they made sure that we were going to be the funeral escort company.
No, I didn't ask you if you, because you didn't say that you wear these for drug dealer funerals.
Okay.
You wear them for police officer funerals. Have you been hired to escort a funeral of a fallen police officer on or off duty, either one, a police officer that has died? Have you worn this escorting a police officer funeral?
3 different times. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And you're saying that you wear this so there's no confusion between you and a police officer?
Again, we're talking about this uniform, which is only for special events
Yes,
or special
that's right.
escorts.
We're talking about this uniform.
Well, yes, for honor out of the person that we're escorting.
Okay, so
I get your confusion. I think in Florida, the distinction is this. We have Florida Highway Patrol. They wear a brownish, chocolate milk-colored uniform. No question, this is not an FHP uniform. We have the Sheriff's Office, which statewide wears a very prominent, almost like a Kelly green color. So they're white and green. And then the local municipalities all have their own styles and designs. OPD, which is in Orange County as well, is typically a light blue navy, although they also have different uniforms for different purposes.
but they all have blues, right?
Yes.
I don't know that the...
However,
yeah.
motor officers in Florida all wear white shirts with a belt that goes over their sash. We went to the blues, so that way we're not wearing, in fact, when we started the business and we talked to people in the sheriff's office, they said as long as we weren't wearing white uniform shirts, they had no problem. So we went with the blues to make sure that no time would you ever think we were a Orange County deputy or a local law enforcement motor officer who wears white shirts.
Okay. Why would you have a badge up here?
To represent the company's logo and ID.
But why do it with a badge? Because a badge is a icon of authority, right?
All security companies that run these types of details have badging. I mean, I think that's probably a nationwide trend. I don't know the psychology behind it. Certainly, they probably want to connote some type of authority. You're the expert on that. I'm certainly not. But it is not atypical for these companies to have badges, and to have the accoutrement that you see here is not atypical.
If you're taking great pains to not be confused with law enforcement.
Right.
It seems like you took great pains to replicate a law enforcement badge. You've got the same crest around the top, building in the middle, same arc and font across the bottom and under the building, and then badge number across the bottom.
Sure.
I mean,
So in
come
Florida,
on.
I don't mean to interrupt, but in Florida, that's not a law enforcement style badge. In Florida, a 5-point star is highly illegal. A Florida Highway Patrol badge would be highly illegal. And or a badge with an eagle top, which is what's in the statute, is illegal. So we don't have a badge that contains an eagle. We don't have a 5-point star, and we're not using a Florida Highway Patrol shield, which is
Look,
what's
I'm
in the
executive
statute.
producer of a legal show on network television, and I understand what are iconic symbols of law enforcement. Well, my guest today, Jeremy, is a funeral escort who wants to prove he is not impersonating a police officer. And so I'm looking at why people might think he's impersonating a police officer. And we have a weapon here. This is a non-lethal weapon, right?
Yes, sir.
This is a pepper ball?
That is, sir. Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And these are, people can buy these. And when a consumer buys a weapon, it's got yellow on it. That connotes that this is not a firearm that's shooting bullets,
Correct.
right? Does yours have this yellow on it?
From that company, they make multiple different versions. That one, we have a few of those. However, we also have some that are all black.
Okay. Now answer my question.
Sure.
Do you carry one that has yellow on it?
I carry one that has all black. However, it's in a holster, so you can't see it anyhow.
You can see this.
That is true. Yes, yes, you can.
You could see it.
Yeah.
Why would you not carry one with yellow on it?
I can't answer that question.
Now, Pepperball's mission is to protect life without taking life. And their TCB is known for its effective range up to like 150 feet, right?
Correct. Yes.
And it's also something that you carry.
Correct.
On your duty belt, but yours is all black. So it looks the same as a regular firearm.
Well, that's the reason why Pepperball makes their weapons. Although they are for safety, they are also made to be a weapon that is for self-defense purposes.
Okay. Well, let's look at your vehicles.
Sure.
We looked at your motorcycle out there.
Okay.
It goes 140 miles an hour.
That's what the paperwork says. I can't really tell you that. I honestly don't know myself.
How fast have you gone on that thing?
I've had my bike at a higher rate of speed, but I can't really remember.
If you take your Metro State vehicle
Okay.
next to a real police car,
Sure.
you think an average citizen would be confused and mistake this for a police car?
Well, when the lights are on and they're flashing only purple, and it says vehicle protection unit on it, I understand your confusion. I understand maybe possibly a average citizen's confusion. However, we're being put into a position where we have the vehicles for visibility and safety, and the purple lights make the difference between a law enforcement and a non-law enforcement vehicle.
But just looking at them sitting there,
Sure.
you're saying you painted them this way so people wouldn't confuse them.
Well, I never painted them that way. They came from agencies here in this state. Now, see, one of the things we were speaking about before is including the uniform. One of the painstaking that I have taken was that our vehicles are not all white or all green or black and tan, and they don't have the gold stripes down the side or blue stripes down the side, just like our uniforms don't have the white shirts. We specifically made sure that our vehicles and our uniforms were from another state. Of course, California has black and white vehicles. California wears blue uniforms. But we're not doing funeral escorts in California. We're doing them in Florida. So our vehicles are purposely designed to not mimic Florida law enforcement. We don't use Harleys. We don't use vehicles that are white or with the blue and gold stripes.
this is your motorcycle versus a police motorcycle and your uniform versus a real police uniform.
Right.
You could pull into that V there. We could put you in the center position and you'd blend right in, right?
Well, no, our unit says Metro State on it, and it is a BMW, not a Harley. Our vehicle has our names very clearly in bold letters on purpose for a reason, that we're a company.
And you believe that the average person would say, oh, I've got this motorcycle flying up behind me here, but the letters on his windshield are different, and he's got on a different shirt, and so I'm just going to drop the hammer and drive off.
Well, if one of my vehicles were behind a car trying to do something like that, that person would be immediately terminated and no longer to be a part of our team, because we don't get behind vehicles to pull them over.
Hey, I hope you liked that video, and if you did, then click subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications, because you don't want to miss what I have coming up. You've had complaints filed against you, which are part of what you've got upcoming, and one's with a blue car, one's with a silver pickup.
Correct.
We'll start with the blue car. Let's just take a look at what happened.
Sure.
What are you doing? What does it look like I'm doing, dumb? Get over before you find out.
Stop pretending you're a police officer.
Listen, I know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. What you need to do is figure it out before you start talking and cutting us off.
I'm not cutting anyone.
Go ahead and pull your little phone out.
I'm not
do
cutting
your little
anyone.
Google search and figure out what we're doing and what we legally allow. Good. Then back off and give us room.
I'm not interfering with you at all.
You are by
You
running along.
You've been blocking traffic.
Yeah. I need you to stay to the side, sir. That's what the legal law is. Go back and look it up.
316. Good. Call them now.
Please, 911 right now.
I'm not calling 911.
Go ahead. Call them 911 right now.
I'm not going to call 911.
Tell them it's on video too. Let them know all this.
It's on video.
We also have your tag number. So please let me know.
Escort you to your group.
Seriously?
Yes, sir.
What exactly are you thinking there? You're telling him what to do, where to go, called him names, and got really aggressive with him.
Right. Now, if I can explain, I'd be happy to.
I'm all ears.
Please. So that nice gentleman there, what you don't see, because Real World Police edited the videos multiple times to the point where you're missing the 5 other times he's already driven and caused almost accidents in the funeral. Yes, I apologize for my demeanor and my speaking the way I was at that point. However, that was the 3rd time I'd already spoken to him. The first 3 times that I spoke to him that were a little more polite, that at that point was no longer working. To be on the safe side, to keep my family safe, we needed to speak a little differently.
So you're justifying that?
I'm not justifying my demeanor and behavior, and I apologize for my demeanor and behavior, and I do apologize to the gentleman if he's watching for the way I spoke to him. However, the safety of my family is paramount, and when and my other officer has already advised you multiple times that you're in a funeral and you're putting the family in danger.
And you say officer. What kind of officer are you talking about?
My officers that work for me, they're certified with us. They're part of our company.
So you're state certified?
No, we're not state certified.
So who certifies you?
We have a person that comes out and certifies our men and women.
What's this person's authority?
They're actually a police motorcycle instructor that comes out and makes sure that we do our riding properly.
And so that's how they trained you?
No, sir. Again, I apologize for that.
Because you're not a certified agency.
Right.
And you tell people that you are a state agency.
Right, we're a state-approved agency. We have our state license.
No, you're not.
Well, we're not a law enforcement agency by any means.
No, you're not a state agency. The state doesn't approve agencies. We've talked to the state. The state doesn't approve agencies.
Right. So Mr. DeWitte's company, though, is registered to perform the services.
Well, so is a hot dog stand, but they don't have officers.
Mr. DeWitte's contractors, I'll avoid using the word officers because I understand where you're coming from. Their contractors have performed thousands of these escorts, thousands and thousands of them. We have a handful of videos where someone, in this case, is being belligerent, but in other cases are just non-compliant. The funeral is allowed to go through a red light as long as it's taken the light when it's green. The entirety of that procession has the right of way, even during the red light. And what this company does is it facilitates the safe passage of all of those family members and the grieving parties to go from the chapel to the cemetery. And it's not inappropriate to advise people to get out of that procession. He's not pulling that car over.
But you know that he does that.
That he pulls cars over?
Yes.
I beg to differ.
Hey, did you like that video? Well, click subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications. You won't want to miss what I have coming up. You had an interaction and a subsequent complaint with a man in a silver pickup.
Yes.
And he filed a complaint. And here's a video that the internet claims Jeremy is speaking to a citizen during a funeral escort. Now, regardless of who this person really is, they are a representative of Jeremy's company. Let's take a look.
Sit tight. What's wrong, sir? What's wrong? I'm sorry?
You guys law enforcement?
Are you okay?
I'm great. Are you law enforcement?
I'm asking you a question. Are you okay?
If you're not law enforcement, I'm not stopping for you.
Listen, if you keep going, we'll figure it out real fast.
Let's figure it out real fast.
Florida Statute 316, 1974
Are you
says
law enforcement,
we have
sir?
the right of way with
Are you
emergency
law
vehicles.
enforcement?
You need to sit tight, sir.
No, I don't.
You need to sit
Are
tight.
you, answer my question.
I'm videotaping everything right now. I'll get your tag number if you continue the way you are.
We'll have to take care of the situation.
I need you to sit tight.
Would you let me speak? If you're law enforcement, identify yourself to me. What agency?
We're with Metro State. We're a state-certified agency. You sit right there, please, sir. Thank you. Come on, man. Get out of the way. I got to deal with this idiot. Move. Sit tight, sir. Please don't continue. Hey, boy. Hey, piece of boy.
Reach for
Boy.
Now, that's directing traffic.
Again, he's not pulling somebody over. I don't mean to split hairs with you, Dr. Phil, but the purpose of his company is to provide safe passage. When these vehicles disregard Florida statute, it's his obligation to inform them. Would I inform them in that manner? Of course not. I'm not advocating for that behavior.
The incident report from the sheriff's office says DeWitte carries a pepper ball gun in a gun holster designated for a firearm that mirrors law enforcement by wearing a uniform with a gun belt, motor wing insignia utilized by law enforcement, 2 black stars on the collar, which in law enforcement represents a law executive of senior staff rank, lights equipped with numerous amber and purple lights. Many have red lenses. Funeral procession only has the authority given him by the funeral director to lead and escort a funeral procession. Nowhere does it give Metro State the right to act as law enforcement and operate outside of the procession directing traffic.
Right, so this report is literally cut and paste several times by this officer for the purposes of continuing, in our estimation, to harass and harangue Mr. DeWitte's company. And in fact, this same officer has actually cited his contractors and Mr. DeWitte multiple times, alleging, among other things, the use of red lights on the vehicle, red and blue in some cases. And if I remember correctly, do your due diligence and verify it, every one of those citations has been dismissed by the court or dismissed by the officer before we took it to court.
You're charged under 843.08, which is false impersonation of a law enforcement officer. There's also some language in that statute that is very specific that says not only can you represent yourself visually as a law enforcement officer, you cannot act as a law enforcement officer. And you know, this is very clear. It says that you're in violation if you take it upon yourself or herself to act in such a way or require another person aid or assist in any manner pertaining to the duty of any such officer commits a felony of the 3rd degree. So you can't represent yourself and you cannot act as such. And when you're walking up to somebody saying, hold it right there, stay right there, pull over here, move on, go forward, you're directing traffic.
Here's the problem that we have. The statute that deals with funeral escorts is a carve-out that allows for certain conduct that would otherwise be in violation of this statute. That funeral escort statute is dated and it needs to be updated. It doesn't address current driving conditions. It doesn't address the circumstances he finds himself in.
Hey, did you like that video? Well, click subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications. You won't want to miss what I have coming up. Last time, I sat down with Jeremy, a funeral escort who is accused of impersonating a police officer and is facing up to 85 years in prison. Now, Jeremy wanted to meet me so he could set the record straight, and he brought his attorney, Amir, with him. Now, I had some tough questions for Jeremy about the way he conducts himself on the job, and we took a closer look at his motorcycle and the uniform he wears, complete with baton and handcuffs. Now, Jeremy also requested a polygraph exam to help clear his name, and we'll reveal those results at the end of the hour. But first, let's take a look at what happened last time.
Dumb in a blue car.
Are you a cop?
Don't worry about what I am, because I'm a state agent.
There are certain members of law enforcement that are out to get me. I personally have been arrested 3 times over the past year.
But you have handcuffs.
I don't deserve to go to prison for impersonating a law enforcement officer.
Jeremy, how are you?
Good.
You want to tell your side of this story?
Yes, sir.
What do you wear on your duty belt?
Radio. I have a tourniquet, flashlight.
You have handcuffs on here.
No, we don't.
No,
Sometimes
I've seen you arrested with handcuffs, where they've taken handcuffs off of your duty belt.
some of my men and women do wear
No,
handcuffs.
you, not
Yes.
your men and women, you.
That's correct.
You have no authority to handcuff anyone.
On a funeral escort, that is absolutely correct.
We have a weapon here. This is a non-lethal weapon, right?
Yes, sir.
This is a pepper ball, and I snapped a picture of a law enforcement badge here at LAPD and put it up beside your badge. And if you're taking great pains to not be confused with law enforcement,
Right.
it seems like you took great pains to replicate a law enforcement badge.
But in Florida, that's not a law enforcement style badge. In Florida, a 5-point star is highly illegal. A Florida Highway Patrol badge would be highly illegal. And or a badge with an eagle top, which is what's in the statute, is illegal. So we don't have a badge that contains an eagle. We don't have a 5-point star, and we're not using a Florida Highway Patrol shield.
This is an iconic symbol of law enforcement. This is your motorcycle versus a police motorcycle, and your uniform versus a real police uniform.
Right. Our unit says Metro State on it, and it is a BMW, not a Harley. Our vehicle has our names very clearly.
Let's take a look at some of your asking them to get out of that funeral procession.
Sure.
What are you doing? What does it look like I'm doing, dumb? Get over before you find out.
Stop pretending you're a police officer.
Listen, I know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. What you need to do is figure it out before you start talking and cutting us off.
I'm not cutting anyone.
Go ahead and pull your little phone out. Call the 911 right
I'm
now.
not going to call 911.
Tell them it's on video, too.
Seriously?
Yes, sir.
First off, you're absolutely directing traffic.
Are you okay?
I'm fair. Are you law enforcement?
I'm asking you a question. Are you okay?
If you're not law enforcement, I'm not stopping you.
The case that's kind of the wellspring of all of these charges is an allegation that Mr. Dewitte crossed a double yellow line. As you know, he's equipped with video. Interestingly, the video of him was confiscated by law enforcement and then disappeared. As a result of seizing that video, they've now charged him with multiple cases, multiple counts, going back and looking through his videos to determine that he's a serial impersonator, as they like to say.
Well, they found a video with your encounter with someone in a Porsche.
Those interactions have nothing to do with the funeral escort whatsoever. There's no funeral escort whatsoever. We were done long time before that. We were on our way back to the office when the gentleman almost hit us and then flicked us off and told us because we were nobodies, he could drive the way he was and almost run me over. So what you don't see in that video was before that encounter even happened, we almost had a serious accident.
Hey, did you like that video? Well, click subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications. You won't want to miss what I have coming up.
You must have missed that it's 45 through there, and then you use the turning lane to cut through traffic. I understand you're in a nice car and everything, but let's be a little more mature the way you drive. Let's drive the right way then.
Are you a cop?
Don't worry about what I am, because I'm a state agent. So what you need to do is make sure you're doing the right thing, boy. Nah, he ain't about that life. He's with that he ain't about that life.
Boy,
Yeah.
that's real nice.
Yeah, I know.
Real professional.
The way you almost hit me, boy, is the way it's professional.
You're not a cop.
You want to fight?
Violating rule too.
How's that?
You don't even act like stopping me.
I didn't pull you over. Did I make a traffic on you, boy? Yeah. You're lucky I don't get out. Come on, let's go, bitch. Get out. Let's go. No, come on. Boy, get out. I'm calling you out, bitch.
Come on, follow me.
That's what I thought.
Let's go.
Yeah, get out anytime. I got off my bike.
Let's go.
Okay.
Follow me.
Where you want to go? Right there. We go straight, bitch.
I'm running.
Lights green, fuck. Go ahead.
Really?
You ride a motorcycle, don't you? Somebody told me that you're an avid motorcycle rider and you love motorcycles.
Yeah.
So let me ask you,
I
have
don't
you ever
believe I've
been
ever
almost
had
hit?
one in that way.
Have you ever been almost hit though, for no reason?
Oh,
Because
I've been hit.
okay, so have I. And I've actually was in a coma and I actually flatlined, and then they brought me back and I had amnesia for months and I was in a coma for a very long time. And so when I ride, especially when people are being disrespectful and they almost hit me, granted I was in my uniform that day and I was doing my escorts before and I was moving on to go back to the office, for somebody to almost cut me off and then hit me and not then flick me off and tell me he doesn't give a who we are, that's not right. And I understand that I happened to be in my uniform at that time, but as you can see, Dr. Phil, in the reflection of his windows, at no time were my lights on, at no time did I use any kind of horn or siren or anything of that nature. I approached a gentleman just like anyone else in an intersection that just almost caused an accident and tell him, hey, you almost hit me. What are you doing? Why are you driving that way? Just like anyone else in the United States that gets almost to an accident and they're pissed off because they're not driving professionally or
Right
properly.
up to the point where they say, I'm a state agent.
When he said, are you a police officer? I say, no.
Which was your opportunity to clarify that and say, no, I am not.
Right.
What I am is a pissed off citizen that you almost ran over. But you didn't. You had an opportunity to clarify, and instead you said, I am a state agent. You went through a 45 mile an hour back there. You're talking like a cop.
Right.
And then you're telling him you're a state agent. He's like, oh, I'm dealing with a state agent here.
No, he knew I wasn't law enforcement. In fact, he even says that multiple times in the video. And then he threatens to attack me when we're sitting in an intersection. However, his threats were never in any way, shape, or form pursued, even though threatening somebody on video to attack somebody is a charge in Florida.
He says he does a good job, that these are isolated incidences. Well, we're going to ask a funeral director that's worked with him for years just exactly what she has to say. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.
That's not a firearm, Sergeant. Let's go. That's a less lethal, Sergeant, so legally for the per Florida statute, I'm allowed to carry that, Sergeant. 970. Go ahead and look it up, Sergeant. The vehicle's not stolen, Sergeant. I have the registration for the vehicle, Sergeant. I have the registration for the vehicle, Sergeant. Sergeant, get your lieutenant, please.
There is no lieutenant. I'm
Then
in.
get a captain.
There is no captain.
Then
I'm in.
get somebody that outranks you, Sergeant.
Nobody
I have
outranks
the.
me.
Well, you have handcuffs.
Make sure you have your body cameras running.
Body cameras are running. Why you have handcuffs?
We've been talking to Jeremy, owner of Metro State Special Service, a funeral escort company, and his attorney, Amir. Now, Jeremy has been accused of impersonating an officer, but says he is a dedicated motorcycle funeral escort with loyal customers. Well, one of them is joining us today. Now, Sandra is a funeral director and a business owner and says she has worked side by side with Jeremy for 7 years. So, Sandra, what's been your experience in working with Jeremy and his company?
Well, I personally have never had any issues with Jeremy himself or with Metro State Escort Company as far as taking my families from the churches, to the cemeteries. I've never had any issues whatsoever. Always been professional. Uniform has always been professional. I've never seen him out of character address any of my family members or people that they have escorted to the cemetery. So that's my personal
Right.
issue with that.
You've never been on the back of the motorcycle with him. What is your reaction to some of the videos that you're seeing?
Well, that you're absolutely correct. I've never been on the back of the motorcycle, and this is the first time that I've seen that, and I'm very shocked to see that. Very disappointed because Jeremy knows, I'm all about being professional with people in the public, definitely families that we service. So I will say that I'm very disappointed.
Yeah. Now, have you ever wondered why he's wearing handcuffs and carrying a baton and a utility belt? And he says it's not like a police officer, but it's either like a star trooper or a police something. It's certainly a utility belt like you would see on a police officer. He carries handcuffs, right?
I didn't know he carried handcuffs. And to answer the question about the batons and stuff, that's something that I really never, took issue to, because I pay him to escort my families from point A to point B, and that's what he does. So
I also have a statement from Reverend Henry Postel. He's a funeral director, owner of Postel's Mortuary, LLC. And he says, we have been privileged to work with Jeremy Dewitte and Metro State Escort Company for the past 4 years. He and his team are always professional, courteous, and consistent. They are in no way aggressive or make themselves out to be anything more than a professional escorting company. Escorting a funeral procession is not as easy as it looks. They make our firm look good, and we will continue to use them for years to come for our escorting needs. So these are two people that combined you've worked with for 11 years.
Yes, sir.
And their experience with you has been nothing but positive, good, professional, and you've gotten the job done, gotten people where they need to be when they need to be there during very difficult and trying times.
The most important is the safety of the family
Yeah.
in the worst part of their life at that time.
Yeah, and I've been in funeral processions and seen lunchy people just pull in and pull out and
Turn their
all
high
of
beams
that.
and hazards on so they can run a few red lights because
Yeah,
they got to
it's,
get to Starbucks faster.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. All right, my next guest says Jeremy wears a particular badge on his funeral escort uniform that could be mistaken for a marksman medal. How does he know that? Well, because he says he has the same one. We'll meet him after the break. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.
Over the course of time, I've learned that there's a lot of haters for myself. There's even a guy that started an online website that has been receiving the leaked videos of my body camera that was confiscated by law enforcement. There's even an online channel of a gentleman by the name of Sergeant Blue Bacon. He's interviewed me once.
He started his own company so he could escort funerals.
He even created a parody musical of some of the videos that are out there on social media platforms saying that they were of me. However, a great deal of those videos weren't even true to that fact.
He claims he acts within the law, but that's highly disputable.
I shake my head wondering to myself, don't people have things better to do or worry about the ongoing pandemic that's out there?
Over the past 10 years, Jeremy has been able to get out of trouble in a way that makes him think that he's not doing anything wrong. And now that 10 years worth of trouble has caught up with him, everything's crashing down around him. I have a background in military police. I'm a private investigator. It's my job to find out the facts. I started a social media page where I'm known as Sergeant Blue Bacon, which allowed me to explain legal aspects of complicated things to people all across the world. Earlier this year, I discovered a YouTube channel that had acquired footage of Jeremy Dewitte and his company in action. He himself is quite a character.
Dumb in a blue car.
I posted the videos on my YouTube channel, and I had the chance to interview Jeremy.
I started to allow my security guys to start wearing tasers and the pepper ball weapons.
One of the things that I found very interesting when interviewing him was his insistence that he present a hard target by dressing similarly to a police officer. He's going to great lengths to portray himself as law enforcement so that he isn't messed with. Jeremy is impersonating a police officer. Jeremy is a narcissist and a compulsive liar. When I think about what he's doing, I feel pretty angry. The way he dresses, the shirt, the badge, he wears a bulletproof vest, carries a baton. He plays the part well. Most people think that he is a police officer. In fact, when they ask him if he is a police officer, he doesn't usually say no.
Law enforcement, identify yourself to me. What agency?
We're with Metro State. We're a state-certified agency.
He says that he's a state-certified agent, which doesn't really clear it up. It's clear that he isn't law enforcement because of the way he acts.
Get the over.
Stop pretending you're a police officer.
He's challenging people to fight him in the middle of the street if they don't obey his rules, which he's not allowed to issue by law.
Come on, let's go, bitch. Get out your car.
Jeremy's got a chip on his shoulder with law enforcement. When Jeremy interacts with law enforcement, he has the statute that protects some of his actions memorized.
Per Florida Statute 960, we can have that.
And he sort of uses it to push them around. Jeremy needs to stop acting like law enforcement because it's a crime.
James, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
It bothered you that he's not, when people ask him, are you a law enforcement officer, he deflects and then says, I'm a state agent.
Sure.
State agency and state agent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to start this by saying, looking at that uniform, nothing on there is illegal individually. The totality of the circumstances is where this becomes a problem. If I'm driving down the road and I see someone in an intersection wearing that, I'm not from Florida, so I can't speak for that, but that specifically, if I saw someone wearing that, stopping traffic, directing them, and I thought, well, that certainly looks like a police officer, because standing, 15, 20 feet away from it, I wouldn't be able to say, no, that's not a law enforcement uniform, having been law enforcement. And I went, hey, excuse me, sir, are you a police officer? And he said, I'm a state-certified agent. Well, that tells me nothing.
I think if you take that badge and you look at it, does it have a building on it that looks like the building that's on a lot of law enforcement badges? Yes. Does it have the same patterns and everything? Yes. It is something that might be used in Hollywood in a movie to represent to people that this is a law enforcement officer. And I think most people look at this and say that you've gotten as close to the edge as you can get without crossing the line, in hopes that people will assume that you're a law enforcement officer so that you can enjoy the gravity that comes with presenting yourself that way without crossing the line. And you seem to be badge heavy when you even don't really have a badge, but that you're badge heavy. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.
Get over! Over! You out of my funeral! Out of my funeral! You over there! Motor one's moving again.
The company that you say edits all of these is Real World Police, and they've made a statement.
Of course.
And their statement is, they say Real World Police publishes original reporting covering U.S. law enforcement and crime. Our programming is dictated by timing, significance, prominence, availability, and significantly human interest. The combination of Jeremy's extreme personality and his extensive unrepentant criminal history made him a natural story subject.
I have repented. I apologize for the way I've spoken sometimes. I do feel bad about that.
You got a great business. Why are you going to blow this up from the inside out?
Right.
You got all of this stuff going on, but you got to walk around with this chip on your shoulder, yelling at people and being badge heavy when you don't even have a badge.
So
I would be asking myself, what is it about me that's causing me to misbehave in a way that draws negative attention to me?
Sure. So let me ask you one question.
Did you hear anything I just said?
Heard everything you said, and I'm going to respond to it. So I'm asking you, where am I badge heavy? Where have I pulled over where have I pulled over some car on the side of the road, or some lady and asked her for a driver's license? Where have I done that other than yelling at somebody that's entered my funeral illegally?
It's not your funeral procession.
That's correct.
It's the funeral home's procession. You were hired to facilitate it. You are an escort. It's really hard to talk your way out of something you behaved your way into.
I agree with you.
It's not yours. And you don't have to take personal because some guy doesn't pay attention for a second and cuts into the funeral procession. You can go up and say, "Sir, I'm sure you didn't notice this, but there's a funeral procession going on. If you wouldn't mind, could you move out of here?" And if he says, screw off, then he rides in the funeral procession. It doesn't make the person get there any slower. It doesn't disrupt the graveside service. It's not an emergency situation.
I totally agree. And all I would ask is you show me one video that hasn't been altered to where that's how I start off the conversation from the very beginning. Once the family's life has been put in danger multiple times, it has escalated to that. I do apologize for my demeanor. But let me ask you one question, Dr. Phil.
You've already asked me one.
Let me ask you another one then. Your absolutely beautiful wife, I would assume after how many years again you've been married?
44.
If she were to pass away tomorrow, the one person that you've spent 44 years with, and she was everything to you, you'd be the most emotional, distraught person you've ever thought of. And the company that you hired that is protecting you and getting you from point A to point B safely is doing it the professional way. And somebody decides that, you know what? Your funeral doesn't matter. Your family doesn't matter. It's more important for me to turn my high beams and hazards on and act like I'm part of the family or funeral and actually almost put your family in danger and almost cause accidents or hurt your own family that you understand that I'm keeping safe from point A to point B. Okay, so you understand that.
No, what's the question?
My question is would you not want me to make sure that your family's absolutely safe no matter what it might take?
Okay, my answer has two parts.
Okay.
Part one is that is the clumsiest effort to deflect from everything I just told you that I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, sir.
Number two, if I lost my precious wife, I wouldn't give two who was driving behind me and getting in the line. I would be totally focused on her.
Right. And when I lost my son, I thought the same thing, Dr. Phil.
Very sorry that you lost your son. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on. This guy's terrific, right?
Yes, he's actually very professional.
Okay, so you have no problems with him as an examiner or the test?
No, sir.
It all went professional and
Yeah, he was
everything, so
very sharp.
good, bad, or indifferent, you have no issues?
Not at all.
With it whatsoever. Gil, when it comes to polygraph exams, you're also a countermeasures expert. Explain what countermeasures are.
Countermeasures are behaviors that you can do during specific questions on the exam to enhance physiology on those areas and appear as a truthful individual. That's why we have activity sensors on the floor for your feet, activity sensors on the chair for core movements, and the rubber tubes that go over your chest and your stomach do record upper body movements, upper body activities. So if you were to try to manipulate any of those, we actually have the sensors that tell us this data is true, this data is not true.
Did that play into the test yesterday?
Yes, it did.
But ultimately, with your expertise and the screening devices, were you able to get a clean test?
I did.
Okay. Well, let's look at the results. Question number one, have you knowingly misused your given funeral escort rights to appear as someone empowered by law enforcement? And your answer was?
No.
2, have you falsely presented yourself to a citizen as someone empowered by law enforcement? And your answer was?
No.
3, during the course of your duties, have you knowingly used authority exclusively given to law enforcement officers? And your answer was?
No.
No. So you answered no to all 3 questions. And what was the result?
It is my opinion that Mr. Dewitte was being deceptive to the target questions.
Okay, and numerically, what would he have to have scored to have come out deceptive?
This methodology calls for a -3 or less in order to be in the deceptive range. Mr. Dewitte scored at a -37.
So this was not a close call.
This was not a close call.
At no time was I lying. I know that I was very nervous. I know that this is my life that we're fighting for, but I can't answer that. I know I wasn't lying. I'm not being deceptive. I understand what he's saying about the way I was, my posture and the way I was reacting is what the deception is from, but I'm not being deceptive.
Well, you asked for the test.
Yeah.
And I brought you the best.
Yes.
And you agreed that he's the best.
Very good.
I think you expected to have a different result on the polygraph.
Yes, sir.
I don't think you're seeing this situation clearly. I don't think you have real insight into this situation and circumstance. And I think you're putting yourself in a difficult situation by the way you're presenting yourself, by the relationship that you have that's adversarial with law enforcement. And I think it's been going on for a long, long time because I think you've got a chip on your shoulder. Right this very minute, if you could see yourself through my eyes,
Sure.
you would feel a whole lot better about yourself.
I appreciate that.
And you've got to make the decision at some point that you're okay. I hate to see you blow your life up, blow your business up, blow your family livelihood up because you're playing into this not being enough. You know, you are enough. I mean, you got a beautiful family. But you've got to stop trying to justify and rationalize and explain away these things and own them, fix them, and move on.
Yes.
And I'm willing to get you help to do that with if you're willing to take the help and do it. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.